Episode 3: Vikings and the Norse Apocalypse. Imagine a winter that never ends. A sky choked with ash, the sun snuffed out like a candle, and a cold so relentless it starves the land. For the Vikings, this wasn't just a nightmare, it was prophecy. They called it Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods, where frost giants, monstrous wolves, and the dead themselves would rise to tear the world apart. But buried beneath these tales of divine warfare lies a darker truth. Centuries before the sagas were written, Scandinavia endured a climate catastrophe so devastating, it reshaped their very understanding of existence. This is the story of how fire and ice, volcanic eruptions and endless winters forged the myth of the apocalypse. The Vikings saw their world as fragile, tethered by the roots of Yggdrasil, the great ash tree, and like all living things, they believed it would die. Ragnarök begins with omens, the monstrous wolf Fenrir breaking his chains, the serpent Jörmungandr poisoning the seas, and the trickster Loki leading an army of the dead. But the first sign of doom is always Fimbulwinter, 3 winters with no summer in between. Families turn on one another, lawlessness reigns, and the sun vanishes, swallowed by wolves. But why 3 winters? Why wolves? To the Norse, these weren't arbitrary details. They were echoes of a trauma etched into collective memory. A time when the climate itself became a predator, and survival meant confronting the unthinkable, that even the gods could fail. Ragnarök isn't just about cosmic battles, it's about human vulnerability. The Fimbulwinter represents a breakdown of society, when nature's rhythms stop and chaos replaces order. For a people dependent on seasons for farming, fishing, and survival, that's the ultimate terror. In the year 536 AD, the sky went dark, not just in Scandinavia, but across the world. Chronicles from Constantinople to China describe a sun that lost its light, as if the heavens were veiled by a shroud. Temperatures plummeted, crops withered, snow fell in summer. For over a decade, famine and disease ravaged Europe. A disaster so severe, historians call it the worst year to be alive. We now know the culprit: a volcanic eruption, likely in Iceland. When a volcano explodes, it doesn't just bury cities in lava, it fills the atmosphere with sulfur dioxide, a gas that transforms into reflective particles. Sunlight bounces back into space, and the planet chills. For Scandinavia, already a land of harsh winters, this would have been catastrophic. Imagine a blizzard that lasts for years, rivers freezing in June, livestock dying in their pens. This wasn't just a bad winter. It was Fimbulwinter. Tree rings from this period tell the story. They're stunted, starved of sunlight. Ice cores from Greenland show spikes in sulfur, chemical fingerprints of ancient eruptions. A volcano in 536, followed by another in 540, then a third in 547. 3 volcanic winters, back to back. Sound familiar? To the Norse, this wasn't geology, it was destiny. Beneath the soil of Scandinavia, the scars of this disaster are still visible. At sites like Upokra in Sweden, archaeologists find layers of ash, not from fire, but from skies raining toxic particulates. Grain silos lie empty, their contents scavenged by desperate hands. Weapons are found buried in riverbeds, perhaps offerings to gods who seem deaf to prayers. But the most haunting evidence lies in the graves. Mass burials from the 6th century reveal bodies stunted by malnutrition, their bones riddled with signs of disease. Yet amid the despair, there's defiance. Amulets of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, cling to skeletal necks, a plea for protection, or maybe a promise. We will endure. These people didn't know about volcanoes. They saw the sun dimming, their children starving, and asked, why? Ragnarök gave them an answer. It wasn't random suffering. It was part of a grand, tragic cycle. Even the gods must fight, die, and be reborn, and so must we. So did the Vikings predict the end times, or were they remembering it? The fire giant Surtur, who engulfs the world in flames, could mirror volcanic eruptions. The wolf Skjöld, chasing the sun, might embody the endless twilight of ash-filled skies. Even the final battle between gods and giants feels like allegory, a society fragmenting as resources vanish. But perhaps the most striking parallel is hope. In the myths, Ragnarök isn't truly the end. Two humans survive, sheltered in a forest, destined to repopulate the earth. The sun, swallowed by a wolf, is reborn in her daughter. The cycle begins anew. Myths aren't lies. They're how we process trauma. The Vikings didn't have science, but they had poetry. They turned catastrophe into a story of resilience, one that still speaks to us today. Today, Scandinavia thrives. Its winters are still harsh, but predictable. Yet as our own climate shifts, glaciers melting, storms intensifying, we too face a Fimbulwinter of sorts. The Vikings teach us that apocalypse is not just destruction, it's a reckoning. A chance to ask what we'll preserve, what we'll sacrifice, and what stories we'll leave behind. After all, Ragnarök was never about the end. It was about what comes after.